All right, what's going on YouTube? This is BoxingWave. Triple G, Gennady Golovkin will be returning to fight Ryota Murata this December 29th, right at the very end of the year. These guys are going to be fighting out in Japan. And this may be news to a lot of you, but this is something that's been brewing for a long time. That's literally the first thing I've heard about Triple G since his last fight against Sarameta last December. So by the time we get this fight, this will be it'll be a year since Triple G has been in the ring. And just to let you know, Triple G will be turning 40 in April. All right. He's currently holding the IBF title, which he defended against Sarameta in his last fight. Since his loss to Canelo in a rematch, he fought Steve Rose, he fought Deverenchenko, and then he fought Sarameta. He's changed coaches. He went over to Jonathan Banks, who used to train Vladimir Klitschko, and he's been there with him since. And this is going to be a unification match because Ryota Murata is the WBA champion right now. Then you have Demetrius Andrade over there in the WBO title, and then you have Jamal Charlo, who has the WBC title. Right? So I figured that this fight was going to happen, when it first, the rumors started coming around and the talks started to come around. They said that this fight was going to be for December. So Triple G basically took the whole year off. All right. It's not a bad fight, especially with Triple G at this point in his career. He's 39 years old. He hasn't really been that active the last few years. There was a point where Triple G was a champion and a top contender where he was fighting 4 times a year. When he was fighting with HBO, he was very, very active in the ring. And he's been he's been pretty much fighting once, maybe twice a year in the past few years. But this fight here is not a bad fight. Ryota Murata is probably the most popular Japanese boxer today. He's definitely up there. He's one of the top as far as popularity. All right. So I'm sure he's getting paid a large amount to fight Murata out in Japan. And I've said this in videos in the past when it came to Andre, when it came to Jamal Charlo, and some of the other top fighters that, haven't really had a chance to get in there with some of the top boxers at the middleweight division. Everyone speaks on Golovkin and Canelo, and they are big fighters. They are big names. But I always said, I wondered why a lot of fighters didn't try to really push to fight Murata out in Japan, because he's such a big star out there. Maybe not in America, but out there he's a huge star. But Murata is a good fighter. He's a come forward, flat-footed fighter, pressure fighter. He can definitely scrap. Puts a lot of power down in his punches, and is pretty much relentless. Is a very durable fighter as well. But he's a pressure fighter. He's faced Rob Brandt, which is probably, he had 2 fights with him, lost the first one, and won the rematch, right? Stopped him in a rematch. And then he had the Indom fights as well, where he lost the first one and he won the rematch. And in both fights, he was more aggressive in the second fight. So after he lost the fight, he came back into the rematch a lot more aggressive, and that's pretty much why he got the stoppages in both fights. But he is aggressive, and he's going to need to be aggressive in this fight because, first thoughts is off top. He's going to need to put a lot of pressure on Triple G. There's fighters that have done it in the recent years. Canelo in a rematch was coming forward and standing his ground against Triple G, staying in the middle of the ring, not backing up, and backing up Triple G at times. You also had Deverenchenko, who was very aggressive, was using going to the body often and putting a lot of pressure on Triple G as well. And I think those guys had a lot of success because of the fact that, Triple G is a guy that when he's at his best, it's because he's coming forward. He's throwing a lot of jabs, all right? And he's putting down, he's sitting down on every punch, attacking the body, looping hooks around the guard. That's Triple G. Plus on top of that, he's durable. I mean, he never really gets hurt. So Murata, at this point, you're fighting an older Triple G that's slowing down a bit. He's slowed down dramatically over the years, and you want to come forward, and you want to put a lot of power down in your shots, and you got to be well conditioned to fight Triple G because you can't really slow down with him, even though he's slowed down. He's still a pressure fighter himself, but he's he's very technical. All right, he's just not a come straight forward guy. He's very technical in the shots that he throws. Where the punches are placed. Very, very technical fighter, Triple G. So it's not a bad scrap. I think overall, when it comes to this division, and I expressed my disappointment with the division for years now. I mean, the middleweight division is historically one of the greatest divisions in the sport. And the way it's been in the last few years, it kind of really became all about Canelo, and since Canelo moved up, everything has been frozen, really. You have champions that don't really want to unify. You got fighters that are on different platforms, but, fights still can be made, I believe Murata might be, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he fought Rob Brandt on ESPN. All right. But I think he might have fought on DAZN before. Regardless, though, fights should be made. Unification matches should be made. They could be made. We can no longer just keep making excuses for why fighters don't fight. We can't allow the politics to get in the way of the sports. And I think the fans are part of the problem, which is what I expressed recently in a video. Fans need to hold boxers accountable and put pressure on the fighters to fight other fighters that's outside of, whatever network they're fighting on. I think part of the reasons is the fanboys like to defend these fighters when they choose not to fight fighters that's with their network or outside of their network. And that's part of the problem. And this is what we gotten over the years. And I know Triple G, for right now, and as far as middleweight, he's the most seasoned fighter. He is. He's been in there with Canelo twice. He's been in there with Daniel Jacobs. He's been in there with David Lemieux and other fighters. He's been in there with a lot of middleweights. And there was a time where middleweights did not want to fight him. Saunders didn't want to fight him at one point. Chavez Jr., when he was on top, he didn't want to fight him at one. Sergio Martinez. But as, things got tougher for Golovkin, he started fighting better fighters. There were more fighters starting to call him out, like a Demetrius Andre, like a Jamal Charlo. These fighters wanted to fight him verbally. But in my experience of having a boxing channel, I've learned that the call-outs are not always real. Offers need to be made. It can't always be, certain networks or certain promoters just making all of the offers. Sometimes you got to throw realistic offers to get fights made. Golovkin, not Golovkin, Canelo's going over to Fox to fight Plant, which is cool. But this needs to happen more often. Triple G still is a name in this sport. I believe that if Gennady Golovkin or Jamal Charlo really wants that fight, have the PBC send Gennady Golovkin an offer and get the fight. Let's not just call him out. Send the offer, send the money over. If your handlers are as interested as you are, they will send the money. Sometimes the politics just get in the way. Demetrius Andre, I feel bad for him because no one's ever really wanted to fight him. I think while Triple G and Murata's fighting, what I would love to see is Andre fight Jamal Charlo. Jamal has expressed his disinterest in fighting Andre. I don't know if this is because of stuff that happened back in the day, but regardless, there's been a lot of back and forth between the two, and we should have gotten a fight between those two a long time ago. If not at 154, at 160. But I just think I'm just disappointed with the division overall. Chris Eubank Jr., a lot of talent with him. Who is he fighting? What is going on with him? why can't we get a Jamal Charlo fight or the Andrade fight or the Golovkin fight? Like, what's going on with him? Jaime Munguia, I know he's a fun fighter. You know, I don't, he is a top fighter though. I know he's a fun fighter to watch, but at this point, he's young, but he's seasoned and experienced enough to get thrown in there with the real wolves, you know? I know he's fighting Gabe Rosado coming off his biggest win. But at the same time, Gabe is still, you know, they're probably going to fight at 160. You know, Gabe right now has had two back-to fights that good performances at 168. Still, I just want to see guys like Munguia really test themselves. You know, he's up there in the rankings. I think he's up there #1 for the WBO right now. Why are you not trying to fight Andre? And Andre is on the zone. You know, he's there. You know, Triple G could have fought him by now. Munguia could have fought him by now. And then you got guys that's on the come up like Janovic. Janovic is on the come up. And let me tell you something. This guy is an animal. You know, and most likely Andrade is going to be the one to have to face one. And that's not a fight that I'm sure if Andrade could win. That is a tough fight for Andrade. You know, especially at this stage in his career. He's pushing his mid-30s at this point and still never really got a big fight. So for some reasons, it is his fault. But other reasons, you know, I still feel that a lot of fighters have ducked him, avoided him at all costs. You know, moved to different divisions without fighting him. I know he doesn't have the best resume, but part of that reason is because no one really wants to fight him. You know, and I get it. I know how the sport work. I'm aware. You know, Andre is a guy that's not bringing a lot of popularity, and he's very dangerous. High risk, low reward. I get it. I know guys like Triple G and Canelo have 4 other really good fighters going up to fighting Kovalev and stuff like that. I understand that. But there was a time where he held a title in the division. He's still holding the title in the division, you know. And I think Golovkin, and I think for all these guys, not just Golovkin, because I'm not putting blame. I think it's all of their faults. There's so many fights that could be made. And I think these guys, when it comes to Charlo, Triple G, Andrade, you know, not for nothing, but if these guys can get it together, they can really have an undisputed champion at 160 by the end of next year, if not as early 2023, you know, if they really like push to get it. And that would be a beautiful thing. You know, Triple G, this is going to be a unification match for him. You know, if he is to win, I don't know what he has left for. I know he really wanted a third Canelo fight, but it doesn't look like that's ever going to happen. So since that's not going to happen, and it's still possible, it is possible, but if it's not going to happen, what do? You know, you're on your last years. Are you just going to retire after this fight if you don't get the Canelo fight? Or are you going to try to become undisputed? That would be a great thing if you can do that on your way out. Can you beat Andrade at this point? Can you beat Charlo at this point? I personally think I think in the best scenario, and I know I'm dismissing mandatories when I say this, but I think the best case scenario right now is for Triple G to fight Murata, which is scheduled, and Jamal Charlo fight Demetrius Andrade. You know, I made several videos on that and expressed my disappointment on why that fight hasn't happened yet, because I've been pretty much talking about that fight my whole YouTube career. All right, so that would be the best case scenario, and the winner of both fights fight each other for unification. And that's something that's realistic. I don't care who's on what network. I know there's offers that have been made. All right, but you know, if these fighters want to really be great, that's what they'll do. Anyway, I like the fight. It's a good fight. I'm still leaning towards Triple G. I know he's older, but I think he's still better overall than Murata, you know, and Murata has lost to two fighters that I think Triple G would absolutely destroy. And I know styles make fights, but Murata is a pressure fighter, and I feel like Triple G has already fought pressure fighters that's better than him, you know. But it should be a fun fight, especially if Murata is well conditioned and he's very durable and he's a really scrappy type of guy. So it should be a good scrap. Anyway, that's my views on it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. Smash that like button if you like the content. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.